Okay, we are live. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am joined today by very special guest, Chris, aka Macro Zach from BitStarter.ai. It's a pleasure to have you here, Chris, and really appreciate you taking the time because I know you have a busy schedule. I think a lot of people will probably be aware, those who are in the Bittensor ecosystem, of some of the work that you have done over the past few years and also more recently with BitStarter. But maybe by way of introduction, you could give us all a little bit of a background and an introduction to who you are, and then we will get into all of the good stuff around BitStarter.
Fantastic. Thanks for the intro. Great to meet you at last. I feel like we've met before. We had a little intro call, but like having seen your shows and seen your face so much, it feels really nice to have the time together. Thanks for inviting me. So my first entry to BitTensor was through Macrocosmos. I was a part of the team there from the start. I'm still a founding partner, but as of September, I launched BitStarter and did that on my own initiative, self-funded it to create BitTensor's first incubator accelerator / crowdfund so that I could help new teams that wanted to launch on the protocol, enrich them with everything that we've learned in the first generation of Bittensor builders, and then in so doing, build the whole protocol better. So that was in September, and since then we've launched 3 new teams.
Yeah, amazing. We'll get into those new teams in a moment. But what was the inspiration, Chris? Because I know we've seen the likes of Kickstarter many years ago that kind of took hold with incubating and helping accelerate a number of different, let's call it internet first businesses. What was the motivation around BitStarter, or maybe the inception around that idea to want to bring it to life?
Yeah, man, great question. So it wasn't to build a crowd fund, it was to help the new teams. So it wasn't built for new teams so much as it was like designed around them. So it was meeting prospective subnet founders and them asking me things like, how do you guys at Macrocosmos do it? This is so tough. And it had got tougher with the introduction of subnet specific tokens. You're now managing your own liquidity pool. Your price like spikes and drops all the time, and you're trying to utilize an adversarial game theoretic network to produce like state-of-the-art intelligence commodities. It's really tough. And I designed BitStarter. Every element of it is designed around the problems, the specific challenges that I knew that prospective teams were facing, so that we could basically be the vehicle that would help them to launch and launch successfully. So there were 3 key areas that we wanted to solve for. The first one is essentially access, assurance, and alpha. So access is, okay, I've got a great idea for a subnet. I've worked on it for months. I'm on like V6 of the white paper. Now I'm going to Discord channels and asking someone like Jacob or Stefan, please can you give me feedback with this work on Bittensor? Like I've mined a bit before, I know this field really well, would it work as a subnet? And they might be waiting for a month, 2 months to get a comment back like, sorry dude, you might be like really hot in your field, but the miners would destroy this, go back to the drawing board. And if you don't get assurance from like key people, if you can't access key people, you can't get them to assure it. If you can't get them to assure it, how can you get anyone to fund it? Who's going to put their money behind something that isn't like properly certified and backed by key people in the protocol? So you have a kind of chicken and egg problem. And the final bit with the funding was that there were quite the investment landscape on Bittensor is growing, but it's still like pretty limited given that we have 128 teams and new ones are trying to join all the time. So it's like, well, the alpha token, especially for a new team, it doesn't have much value yet. And basically a lot of investors can be like, well, kind of take it or leave it because this is a really high risk asset on top of another high risk asset on top of TAO, right? So effectively, new teams were kind of a bit stuck and it would take months to get on the protocol. So the final aspect was just thinking, we've all had ideas for subnets. If I were trying to launch on, what would I want? Well, I want someone who's done it before to look at my pitch. I want them and their team to be able to assess it from different angles, not just an engineer talking about whether it would work from, on the dev side, but people who understand liquidity pools, tokenomics, people with experience on running a subnet as a whole, not just managing minor relations. I'd want them to introduce me to the top people on the protocol, get them to give me free advice so that I'd have a mixture of experts. I want them to give me a platform from which to pitch my concept and find my people. And then following launch, I want them to continue supporting me for as long as possible. And ideally, I want them to do it for as little money as possible as well. I want them to basically take my alpha token, not any cash, because new teams are future allocation rich, but they're cash poor. So that's exactly what the BitStarter kind of pipeline does. And I think that given that we had so much inbound interest, we haven't gone out seeking submissions from anyone. This HackQuest partnership, the Ideathon, it's the first time we've actually actively been part of receiving new applications because we receive so much inbound. So that is a good sign that we're serving a need.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So is there a quote unquote typical journey for these first few subnets that you've helped to incubate? And we'll talk about Alpha Core, Quasar, Jin more specifically in a moment. But it seems like there's been a little bit of a different journey for each of those from me on the outside looking in. So I'm not sure if there is a typical journey, or maybe is your goal to create that in future after these first few iterations? Could you speak to that process?
It's almost like each one that we do reveals a new pathway or a new element of the landscape that we weren't aware of. Now, the thing is about the applications that we get through is that they're at wildly different ranges of maturity, funding, experience. You've got everything from a machine learning PhD who's never been outside of university, but who has an incredible breakthrough in their white paper and their research that they know could lead to a groundbreaking subnet. Then you've got serial founders who've had multiple real world exits, being like, oh, I can need some compute. Someone recommended Bittensor. Could I build my next? I've already won 5 million in pre-seed. Could I build some of the backend on Bittensor? Completely different levels, but they typically start with, they come to us with a GitHub repo, a white paper, and a pitch deck as the basic, this is what we have so far. From that, me and my team will assess it. Why does this need to be a subnet? What are you scoring? What's your ground truth? How are we going to validate this? What's the precedent for doing this on Bittensor? Is there a way that you're going to be driving performance and going towards state of the art? And if they can answer those questions and they're absolutely committed to doing it, because it's a challenging process, then we create a kind of subnet MVP. We summarize what they're trying to do. We create a subnet MVP, me and my team, and then we get them to assess it and sign it off. Is this an accurate representation of what you want, and can we follow this through? Then that submission, that executive summary with the subnet MVP, gets submitted to our advisory panel for free discretionary advice from just different people in the protocol. Ideally, what we found is that the best way to get good advice is to make it a bit more tightly bound. Get the team to go, right, which parts do you really need advice on? Which parts are you kind of worried about? Which advisors do you think might be best placed to give you that advice? At the same time, we also do some technical due diligence the closer that we get to launch. We sign a term sheet, and then we manage to get them the advice back. If they want to act on it, they can. If they just want to launch, then they're free to do so as well. So the idea being that by that point, we've kind of, even if they come from very different places, we've converged towards, you have an MVP, you've gotten advice from our advisors, and we've got you to a state whereby we can be confident that you're going to be a success and that we can support you through the launch.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for the breakdown. You mentioned the partnership or the the initiative you're doing with the hackathon at the moment and the ideathon, that's obviously one way that new people can begin to submit subnet ideas at this moment. Is there a process or an open door for people to submit their subnet ideas with BitStarter, or what does that look like in general, aside from just the ideathon that is obviously running at the moment?
Honestly, I when we were building the web app, I designed it with a submit a proposal for Subnet, but we got so many applications, as in to me personally through Telegram, to our X, people just bringing people to us, like going, hey, this guy's trying to build something. I told him about what you're doing. We had 20 high quality applications in the first 2 months, 8 weeks. You quickly realize if we open the floodgates, we get another 100 more. I just wouldn't be able to. Me and my team wouldn't be able to, give them the time of day. So we're building that out. We actually did some work on that today. That submit a proposal functionality on our web app, but we kept it off because I wasn't expecting to get that much inbound. So right now, it tends to be people who are put through to me through a connection or come through on X or Telegram, social media. One person even got in touch with me on my LinkedIn before I put anything on my LinkedIn about BitStarter at all.
Yeah.
I was like, they're everywhere. But it goes to show how much a need there was for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm curious to see how you position, or how you're thinking about BitStarter's positioning, let's say compared to a traditional accelerator, because you mentioned um, some of the support avenues, I guess, that people get. They're getting to submit to you and your team, and then they get to receive feedback from some of your advisors, and they're getting direction in terms of how to refine the incentive mechanism, or like you mentioned, they'll tell and give blunt feedback that the miners might tear this apart, and you need to go back to the drawing board. How do you see the role of BitStarter compared to traditional accelerators or incubators that are, completely outside of the TAO ecosystem?
Yeah, good question, because it's the main thing that we're offering that's different is that it's a fully integrated service. So you get launch pads in crypto that will it's kind of pay to play. Almost anyone can use it if you pay the fee, and it's more of a publicity and hype machine that leads to kind of a pump and dump type dynamic. But don't want to do that to this protocol. Care about it. I want to launch genuinely good teams. The thing that's holding Bittensor back is that it's so complex that and so decentralized that there's no one place to get that insight. In terms of being different from other AI accelerators, the ability to build on the protocol is obviously one thing. We're the first to do that, but other incubator accelerators, they just won't be as open to helping. I've given significant amount of time to everyone who's pitched, everyone who's bought something, but also launching a team live on air and then continuing to support them. Other AI accelerators, they will take equity. We don't take equity. We only take a share of future emissions, which means our incentives are aligned. I'm not trying to spread bet like a lot of VCs do, where they're like, well, I will buy equity 20% of 100 AI startups with the fund that I'm managing, and then one of them will 1000x and the rest will die, but the 1000x one will more than pay for the rest back, right? It's like an exponential asymmetric play.
Sure.
We go, no, we're trying to build the whole protocol better. We don't take any of your equity. We just give you all the tools to build Bittensor better. We take a small amount of the future emissions, which means our incentives are aligned. I'm not waiting for the equity to give me my pay and it's kind of sink or swim. I want you to succeed from day one. And when you do succeed, the value is yours. We only take the emissions for the first 3 months because we want them to thrive and not to have the weight of having to give someone else passive income for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about the crowdfunding and the pledging mechanism in more detail, but I think one of the things I saw from some of your previous interviews was that when you began to kind of initiate BitStarter, you had a call with Constant, you had the news that he had somewhat baked the ability into Substrate for crowdfunding to kind of take place. So I guess that allowed BitStarter to go from 0 to 1 very quickly. Could you speak on that a little bit, and then we can talk about the actual pledging mechanism?
Absolutely. I mean, that was strange because I wasn't even intending to call Jacob that day. I was trying to speak with Etienne, who's on the board at OTF, and I just wanted to. It was about a month after I bought the domain name, and it was starting to pick up traction. I thought I should speak to someone at OTF about this before I go ahead and do it. But to call with Etienne, but he happened to be with Jacob at that point. They were touring Asia. I thought, well, may as well do my pitch and see what both of them think about it. Jacob said not only did he say, I love it and I want to be on the live stream, which I think will happen sooner rather than later, but also I already wrote it. I'm like, what do you mean you already wrote it? I wrote this into Substrate like a year ago. Like, you can just take the code. That was before there was even detail, as in there were no subnet alpha tokens. So the dormant code was basically TAO for TAO. It was called crowd loan. That's what the script was called. But so we adapted it to be for alpha, which took a little while. It wasn't like just switch it on, it's right there. We had to. It's about months of work with one OTF engineer, and then we had to build the web app and the site itself, test it with some test TAO, test it with real TAO, and go on air and cross our fingers and hope it all worked out okay. So we've learned a lot since then, and we've adapted the mechanism in quite a few ways, but there's a lot more we can do with it. It doesn't have to be TAO for alpha, and it doesn't have to be on the way that we do it now in terms of selling existing alpha that's already in the pool.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think that's a good segue into the pledging mechanism, because like you said, you have to do some tweaks over the first month to make sure that people like myself or other investors are able to pledge alpha tokens or TAO in a frictionless way. So maybe some people watching this have participated in some of the previous launches, but for those who are maybe not as familiar or who have not participated, could you explain that process of how you like to run the launches and how you actually source the funds to fund those subnets that you've launched thus far?
Of course. So first thing that sometimes gets people who are new to the ecosystem is like the two tokens. So it's like we're going to launch a new team. When we launch a new team, we're creating a new subnet effectively, or taking out a team from an existing one, putting a new team in. So effectively, the subnet token, the alpha, changes because it's almost like the business in a property changing, and therefore the shares in that business is a different business, even though it's the same property. So we are asking pledges once we know which subnet it's going to be, as in once the new team has agreed to take over an existing subnet, we negotiate with the owner of the subnet or the investor who's bought it on their behalf to discount the alpha, a bit like an OTC deal, an over-the-counter, off-market bulk sale. And we then put it into different streams to satisfy different people's kind of risk appetite. So you get a bigger discount the longer you're willing to pledge TAO for. Why do we pledge TAO? Because new teams need the TAO, the native token to Bittensor, either for runway. We need that to actually, build out our project, to hire new staff, whatever it might be. But they also need liquidity for the liquidity pool. And some subnets have low liquidity, which means they need to put TAO in so that they can reliquify it, maintain the price, and then live off the emissions as carefully as possible. So you pledge TAO, you get alpha in return at a discounted rate, and it's emitted to you gradually so that the new team don't have the boom and bust, and they get a steady line of credit, of liquidity, to help them while they build out their project. So they don't have oh yeah, there was a boom and bust in the first 2 weeks after we launched. Now we're like very close to dereg, So that's the simple way of explaining it. You're pledging your TAO, you're getting the alpha at a discounted rate, and then if you believe in the project and you think, yeah, in 3 months, in 6 months, these guys are going to be flying, you get your alpha that you're entitled to gradually, week by week. And the idea is that we help turn alpha holders into advocates. Well, I'm holding the subnet token for 3 months now, 6 months. What can I do to be a part of it? It's almost like you're closer to the to becoming an investor than an ordinary alpha holder.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit about the back end there as well, like the actual subnet slot and negotiating with an existing owner. Is it the case that you and BitStarter are trying to get subnet slots on behalf of the applicants, or there is the applicants identifying those subnet slots that are being deregistered anyway, and then it's like a kind of three-way, negotiation with you guys, the new subnet owners and the existing slot owner, and maybe every case is different. I'm not sure, but curious a little bit about that process.
You're right. That is what it is, but every process is different, and we will do it differently in future. Primarily because Gordon self-funded this, can't afford to buy subnet slots because they're expensive. So registering a new one is cheaper, but then it has no liquidity in, no alpha to give pledges. Buying an existing one that's high liquidity, that's like 1,400, and that's without any runway for the team. So what we do is we broker at the moment. We broker for their slot, which means that we talk to the team, get to know them, we do the due diligence, we help them with the MVP, we connect them to our partners and advisors, and then when we find out what their kind of needs are in terms of their future emissions, and we try and connect them to the right investor or partner that can help them, that would want to back them. And then we negotiate on their behalf. So for Gin, it was super important to them. They're serial entrepreneurs, they're tenured professors, they know what they're doing. They could not have a situation where they didn't take ownership of their subnet within a year. We negotiated hard on their behalf to get them a deal whereby the subnet becomes theirs after a year, as in fully owned by them, not a gradual divestment by the investor, or it takes 3 years. A lot of investors, not all of them, will insist on like a long tail whereby even right at the end, we always take 20% of emissions no matter what. You never get full control over it. So effectively, there's no way out of you're always giving a part of your subnet revenue to them, even years afterwards. So that's how it works right now. In future, we're looking into, could we register a new subnet, gradually build up liquidity on it, and then put in a new team that we really believe in that slot, and give them better terms than existing investors do. So that's a bit more long term, but that would turn us much more into like an actual long term VC style incubator accelerator.
Yeah, awesome. So you mentioned Gin, and you guys have also helped to launch both Quasar and Alpha Core. Obviously, each of those subnets distinctly different in what they do, but what does success look like, or what are the measuring sticks that you guys have and are thinking about for the success of what those rollouts look in the weeks or months after the pledging takes place? And again, it's going to be slightly different for every launch and every subnet, but are there certain metrics that you're looking at to say, okay, we want to make sure the team is on mainnet, we want to make sure alpha increases by X amount? And it's not always about the alpha price, but maybe there's a handful of metrics that you guys are thinking about as success metrics for the launches that you're doing.
Get them on mainnet as fast as possible. Get them, keep the price above what the crowdfund price was, so that the pledges aren't like in negative equity. And then make sure that we connect them to partners, to people across the protocol, open doors for them, facilitate connections. Long term, it's launch, have our teams in the top 30, top 20, top 10. Like, we want to launch the next score. We want to launch the next ridges, the next shoots. I will go to the other end of the room just to make it slightly more
No problem.
easier to listen to for your listeners.
Yeah.
But ask away.
No, that's all good. I mean, there's obviously the success metrics that you guys are thinking about. Perhaps, and I'm assuming from a pledger's perspective, the primary metric is number go up, and they want alpha price increasing over time. What feedback or what learnings have you had from those initial 3 launches? From both pledgers and then internally.
We got a lot of feedback. We've learned so much from each one. You go through such a threshold, such a watershed with each team because, the first time with Alpha Core, you're like, we're launching live on air. We only built this product like a week ago. It's been tested. We tested it with our own TAO, but we don't know what will happen with an open market dynamic. The first time, the terms weren't quite advantageous enough, and there wasn't any flexibility. These are the terms, you pledge or you don't. So the second time with Quasar, I wanted to make sure there were two tracks. Track A, you get the alpha back in 3 months, but you get a 20% discount. And track B, you get it back in 6 months, but you get a 40% discount. So we can start to measure what's people's appetite for risk. Is 6 months too long? What would be more appealing to people? So after Alpha Core, people were like, it should be this or it should be that. And we took it on board, but it's like some of the realities are that if it's a subnet with low liquidity, we can't offer that much of a discount unless the rate of payback, it makes the rate of payback longer because and if it goes beyond about 6 months, it's just too long. It's just 6 months is a long time in Bittensor, right? And a long time people have their TAO locked up. So we took those on board. We made it more flexible, and the other aspect to it was that we tried to make it much more intelligible in terms of the investment, in terms of what the team were doing, provide more information, and really try and be more proactive about equipping people with the ability to make an investment decision. Finally, with Jin, we thought, well, let's introduce this team live on air. Let's not give any prior information, as we did with Alpha Core and with Quasar, where we gave people about 48 hours, where we'd introduce them on social, put them on our web app, tell people when the live stream was starting to pledge. And with Jin, that's a slightly bigger risk because then you're like, well, if no one knows them, would they be more hesitant to pledge TAO? But it worked really well because it gives people a stronger reason to tune in. It makes it less likely that the subnet number will get out, which means that people can find out before front run and then dump on the open market when it goes live. And then finally, it means that we can reveal lots of the key information live on air. So with Jin, we dialed in Max, who had run a similar sports betting project before. We dialed in Giles to announce the partnership with Tensora, and we completed 600 TAO raise in 51 minutes live on air, which was, it felt like, yeah, that's what I initially imagined it to be back in August, September, introducing 3 amazing founders as a live on air for the first time, and then completing the raise live on the show.
Yeah, it would seem the model of doing it live is not prohibitive for people actually parting ways or pledging their TAO. So is that going to be the model moving forward? You think that format of doing it live is going to work? Because I was also thinking, if I don't know the team or what they're planning to do beforehand, maybe that makes it a bit more difficult for me to pledge. But 51 minutes, it tells its own story. So is that the model you think you'll go with moving forward?
I think it seems to be better for the teams, and therefore we will continue with that model. But we're flexible with it. I want to do them live in person, where we're on air, we have a studio audience, or like we're at an event. But then we also have the online element. I think if we didn't raise live on air, then it would just be like we kicked it off with the live stream, but you can find out more about them. All the information was up on our web app, which we went live with at the same time. So we weren't withholding information. It's just we start with the hour-long hour and a half live show. And then if we don't complete the raise, there's much more information about them. So we're going to try and do something new or different each time, so we can experiment and like find out what's preferable for the teams, for the protocol, and for pledges.
Yeah, you talked about your, I don't know if commission is the right word, but the model where you guys are receiving 20% of emissions from the subnets that you help launch. Could you speak a little bit more on that? And I don't want to
So
misspeak
our
or
typical
explain it, because there obviously has to be a way for you guys to monetize. But could
yeah.
you just explain how that works in a little bit more detail?
So it's typically 3 to 5% of total emissions for the first 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Other investors will take a minimum of basically 20 plus percent of owner key emissions for the first year or more, sometimes 30%. And again, it's a high risk asset, and investors will also front the capital for the subnet slot, so they've put in more. But at the same time, I don't think there are any investors or subnet developers out there that put in as much as we do from as many different angles, that do the tokenomics, that do a technical due diligence, that do marketing, publicity, investor relations. One of my first hires was an VC partnerships manager, because I knew from my time at Macrocosmos, but with other teams, how many founders spend more time courting investors than building their subnet, because they have to. They go around either cutting OTC deals, right, to shore up their token, or that they're trying to sell equity in the long-term future of the business. And we could provide that as a service. We could mean that we take that time burden out of your hands. We do that on behalf of our teams. That will help them to negotiate better, and also help them to leverage our connections as well. So we our cut is smaller because we don't front the capital for the slot, but it's quite low margin what we're doing, because I'm choosing to try and give this fully integrated service. Right? No one told me to do an investor relations aspect. No one told me to hire a publicist or to give like tokenomic scenario modeling support. But again, that's how you build long-term relationships. That's how you build really successful teams, and it's also how you learn a lot more about the whole 360 aspect of running a subnet and how to do it successfully. So those are the terms. But again, we're looking into buying slots themselves, registering new slots, and then we'd have to change the model slightly, because it wouldn't work on future emissions.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the biggest advantage that people are getting. It's the access, and you have the relationships, you have the other stakeholders that are giving advice, providing feedback, critiquing their business model, their incentive mechanism, and you're ultimately helping to condense that time for them to go to market. So I think that's all, well worth, what they're giving up in terms of those emissions to you guys. But they're obviously getting such good access in the form of those relationships and partnerships. What do those partnerships look like for BitStarter as well? You guys want to obviously continue to grow. You want to tap into more relationships, probably both within and outside the native ecosystem. How do partnerships play a role for you guys to continue expanding, and what does that look like, you think, here in 2026?
Great question. We have like 4 or 5 partnership agreements, and the way I see it is that we're not just incubating the new teams or accelerating the new teams, we accelerate each other as partners to incubate the new teams better, right? So if we sign a partnership with or a referral agreement with an organization, I don't just want to pass them teams that have expressed an interest in that service. I want to help that partner to sculpt their service around the needs of new teams, to know how to sell that service line specifically to new teams, and then build it into their tokenomic modeling so that they know they can afford it. So one good example is that the partnerships were led by what new teams were asking us for. We gave them as much as we could, but there are some services that I'm just not equipped to provide, and it's a professional service. It's not something I can just pass on to an advisor. For example, recruitment. We would often get asked by new teams. I'd ask them, does your first month of running a subnet look like? How are you going to get onto main? And they would say, well, we need a full stack engineer. Do you know what? I'm like, well, no, I don't, but I do know a really incredible AI headhunter, and I know him because he was the embedded talent partner at Macrocosmos, and he helped recruit almost half of the team. And after that, he did some work for DCG, and he's lived in Silicon Valley for a long time. He's really, really well connected in AI, machine learning, and this space. So we've got a 12-month partnership with him. His name's Alex Van Claveren, fantastic guy. I know that I can work closely with Alex. I've known him a long time, so that if a team needs a full stack engineer, I can refer them to Alex. Alex is paid in future allocation in their alpha token, which means, firstly, the incentives are aligned and that the team can afford it because they're, as I said, cash poor, future allocation rich. But also, the relative value of Alex's fee is way higher if he hires them a cracked full stack dev, and the subnet does really well. Because if he gets paid a fixed number of alpha tokens, he's like, well, the value of that alpha could triple or quadruple if they do really well. I want to get them the best engineer I can. I want to get them like an ex Anthropic like cracked dev because it's and so the incentives are aligned and all of our partners are like that. So we're all like fixed on the same goal, which is give this subnet everything it needs to succeed. So I would rather work with smaller, more agile people that I trust so that we can work closely in partnership. This is complex stuff, rather than a big, really polished organization that, has a great track record, but they're rigid or they're slow or they have lots of difficult terms that a new team might not be able to satisfy. So that's how the partnerships work right now. We're still developing it because we have a lot of teams, we have several partners, we have the advisors, we have to build it step by step, but it's very promising.
Yeah. Do you see an opportunity to tap into other ecosystems, to bring teams that are not necessarily native to Bittensor or that are as immersed in Bittensor as some of the more native people that are already here? Do you see BitStarter as a bridge to get, again, cracked teams or, high quality people into the ecosystem? And maybe you've had conversations TAO pilling certain individuals already, and then they kind of get immersed in TAO. But what does that look like?
Great question. It was always my goal to prove the model and then go out and find startups that were raising and be like, hey, why are you selling equity to buy compute power when you could incentivize compute power and get paid for doing it without selling equity? Want to try it? You can do it on Bittensor. And it completely flips the script. But that is effectively what's happening. That's how we scaled Macrocosmos to 30 people in under a year, building the full tech stack for decentralized AI. So that is the goal, to go and be able to pitch ecosystems, protocols, startups that we know are raising, get them to build on here. It's already happening. Like I've had three of our teams that submitted, serial founders who'd already raised millions for the idea. We're like, I need a cheaper way to do to access compute. Or I have a lot of data to process, or I need a lot of inference, and it's quite complex stuff that I'm trying to do. Could Bittensor help? How long does a serial founder have to scroll on a Discord server or read a GitHub? Even it's really complex, even if you're very successful. Jin, whose founders, very accomplished, they gave us a testimonial where they said we couldn't have done it without BitStarter. It would be it would have been a labyrinth. If it's three professors going, it's too complex, right? It's probably pretty hard. So we want to facilitate that, but it has to be right for both sides. It can't just be like a flashy, headline grabbing big name. It has to be something that really does fit, and that just takes a lot of craft. That said, if we got that many high quality submissions in our first 3 months, when we'd not even really proven it, and when we were much more ad hoc, 2026, there's so much more we can do. We want to do live crowdfunding in person. We'll go to events, spreading the word for Bittensor. Already went to Davos a couple of weeks ago, brought some Bittensor representatives with us.
Mm-hmm.
We were invited to speak there from pitching Bittensor and BitStarter to an investor, and then bring more investors in too. Like show them how great not only the teams are, but how powerful the protocol itself is, so that we widen the surface area of exploring what could Bittensor's killer app be, and hitting that critical threshold where we just kick in a feedback flywheel effect and take off.
Yeah, you've already hinted at it a little bit, but what else can we expect from BitStarter here over the next few months? And there's probably some things you can say, some things you cannot say. Can we expect a crowdfund coming in the next couple of months? Is there anything on the roadmap that you can give people something, a little flavor of here over the next few months?
Absolutely, man. There's so much in play right now, and our job is to make sure we validate it before we go live with it. That said, in addition to the live in-person events, we want to build in new ways of using the substrate, new ways of using the crowdfund. Could we lease pledgers portions of the owner key of the subnet itself, right? Could we find ways in which we can collateralize the alpha, create really long-term lines of credit from bigger investors? Are there ways in which we can add things like governance rights to the alpha token? All these things are possible, all are desirable. We've had teams asking for them. It's finding the right team and the right opportunity. At least two of those things are definitely happening. It's just waiting for the right time. We will also do case studies, more equipment for pledgers, for new teams to pitch ideas and have them like validated and verified in public. I want to share more of the due diligence and more of the assessment work that we do, because we're building up a lot of insights onto what works and what doesn't, and ultimately give everyone a chance to pitch some ideas, debate them, discuss them, see what types of incentive mechanisms work, and then take those materials to investors, to other protocols, to founders, live in-person hackathons, and get more people working on these problems worldwide. And ultimately, go out and pitch. Go and bring the best founders onto Bittensor. That's the job.
Absolutely. What would your words of advice or words of wisdom be from, analyzing and receiving dozens of pitches, if not maybe hundreds, over the past 6 to 9 months? There's probably some patterns you see. There's some mistakes you probably notice from submissions that, they should have done X, Y, or Z before even proceeding. What would be your words of advice for people looking to create a subnet, even if they go with BitStarter or try to go it on their own?
Great question. I'm going to keep it practical because we've done a lot of the high-level stuff. First of all, right, pick one aspect of what you're trying to do, right, and validate that. If you're trying to create like a new way of processing or generating a certain type of footage or data, pick one segment of the market to test it on. If it's healthcare data and you want to come up with a new way of triaging patients, fantastic. Pick one type of diagnostic category, like one type of particularly troublesome area, like attach a value to it. It's costing hospitals this much a year, and then just test on that. Why? Because it's easier to validate. And one aspect that I found is that people give a lot of thought to mining and way less to validation. Start with the validation. That's your ground truth. Then work backwards, right? Because if you get all the way to the end and you're like, and we don't know how to validate this, we have to go backwards. Start with the validation, work backwards. The final thing that I would say is bring others on board. Find your people, pill them, get them to believe in your vision, bring them on board. Some founders are very secretive about like what they've created. They're worried someone's going to steal it, or they think, no, I need to tinker on it for 3 more months by myself on my MacBook. It's much better to go get as many eyes on it as possible, and if possible, get a co-founder, get someone to actually build it with you. You might create the most amazing subnet design. When you go live on main, it's a whole different story. You're running social media, you're running a liquidity pool, you've got like loads of people in your Discord asking questions. and you're running the mining, the validation, all the rest of it. So get others to help you. Find a way of validating from the start and do a portion of it first. Prove it works on a portion of it, and then take it further.
There you have it, guys. Words of wisdom from Chris himself. There's one question live in the chat, Chris, from Tau Planet. He's asking, how would you describe BitStarter in one sentence?
How would I describe BitStarter in one sentence? It's Bittensor on acid.
Nice.
Nice. The phrase I like to use is like, it's decentralizing OTC. Bitcoin decentralized money from the big banks. Bittensor decentralized AI from big tech. BitStarter decentralizes investment from big funds. That's the idea. We start small, but there's no reason why this can go much, much further.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. We're coming to the top of the hour here, and I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything else you want to mention or cover for anyone watching or anyone who's maybe going to catch this replay for the future of BitStarter?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's backed and believed in this. I'm the one sitting here, talking about BitStarter as if it was all mine, but really, this belongs to the ecosystem in that it was inspired directly by new teams, by the needs of people hunting for alpha, and then being disappointed to see that the price had 10x because people in the know knew first. And ultimately, everything we do is trying to make this ecosystem stronger as a whole. I'm all in, and the mistakes that we've made along the way, and there've been plenty, we do our best to learn from. So there are things that we promised or we tried to build in from the start that actually just take a lot longer. So if you see something you think, they said this, but then that wasn't that good, or what happened to that, we're working on it, and our doors are always open. Come to the Telegram, message us on X. We're very, very busy, but we're never too busy to listen to what people are telling us. And ultimately, it wouldn't exist without everyone. So thank you.
Amazing. Well, Chris, look, I really appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, I know you are busy, but I think that was a very insightful 45 to 50 minutes there. We'll have to get you back in future. I know you're going to be rolling out and helping incubate a whole bunch more innovation on Bittensor. So a big thank you from my end. And yeah, we'll have to have you back very soon.
Thanks, man. If you want to have your own life and spare time for anything else, don't start an incubator accelerator on the Bittensor protocol. I can safely say that is not the way to free time, but it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. So yeah, definitely want to come back and introduce some more new teams with you.
Awesome. Really appreciate your time. And thank you everyone for joining live as well. We'll see you very soon.